Shalom, shalom, friends. Thank you so much for being here. We are excited to explore this very rich topic today, the control over time, the debates and controversies of the Jewish calendar, here with Rabbi Dr. Dalia Marx. Rabbi Dr. Dalia Marx, Ph.D., is the Rabbi Aaron D. Panken Professor of Liturgy and Midrash at HUC-JIR's Taube Family Campus in Jerusalem and teaches in various academic institutions in Israel and Europe. Marx, a 10th generation Jerusalemite, earned her doctorate at the Hebrew University and her rabbinic ordination at HUC-JIR in Jerusalem and Cincinnati in 2002. She's involved in various research projects and is active in promoting liberal Judaism in Israel. Marx writes for academic and popular journals and publications. Marx is the lead editor of the Israeli Reform Sidur Tefillat HaAdam, published in 2020. Her book, From Time to Time, Journeys in the Jewish Calendar, Yeditot Sfarim, in 2018, was translated to several languages and is available in English from CCAR Press. She's the author of When I Sleep and When I Wake, on prayers between dusk and dawn, Yediot Sfarim, 2010, in Hebrew, a feminist commentary of the Babylonian Talmud, About Time, Journeys in the Jewish-Israeli Calendar, and the co-editor of a few books. Her new book, From Time to Time, Journeys in the Jewish Calendar, published by CCAR in 2023, presents a fascinating exploration of the treasures of the Jewish year and artfully blends traditional and contemporary perspectives on each Hebrew month and its holidays. See Marx's website for more information. Marx lives in Jerusalem with her husband, Roli Zilberstein, Ph.D., and they have 3 children. So Rabbi Dr. Dalia Marx, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you for this invitation. It's good to be together. This is a time of a lot of turmoil and worry and also hope. So I am very happy for the opportunity to spend some time with you and to discuss one of my favorite topics, that is time and how we relate to time. On one hand, it's a bit strange to speak about it because all of us understand time. You know, we know what time is it. I don't know what time is it for you. I guess it's about 7 or 8 hours before me. We know what day it is. We know what year it is, but nobody really understands time. Time is a mystery for all of us. We flow through time, or maybe time stands still, and maybe time flows and we stand still, depends on our philosophy. And my task today is to speak about debates and controversies that are related to the Jewish calendar. So you may say, what kind of debates and controversies can we have? We all know everything is very clear. And I think the good news, maybe I'm beginning with the end note here, is that today, in spite of the fact that we are so polarized, and I live in Jerusalem, and the polarization between people and between Jews is felt in a very present way. There's one thing we don't really argue about, and that's time, how time works. So I don't know how you relate to your Shabbat, but all of us agree when Shabbat falls. And in that sense, it's a very big achievement, and it wasn't always like that all the Jews agreed about time and how we celebrate time, how we commemorate time. When I think about it, this is the cover of my book that's my love letter to the Jewish people, as it were, and I invite you to take a look at it. If you want to look at the CCAR Press website, you can see the introduction, and you can download the study guide that goes with this book. But I'm not going to talk about my book. I'm going to talk about some other things. When I think about controversies that are related to time, I often think about Norbert Leo Elias, who was a German Jewish sociologist. He moved during the Holocaust from Germany to the UK, and he was very fruitful in his work. But one of the things that I would like to think about today is his essay on time. He originally wrote it in 1984. It was translated to English in 2007. And he says, we don't need to talk about time, or in German, Zeit. we have to talk about how we make time, how we time, or in his language, Zeitbestimmung, or we can translate it to time making or timing. He says that you can't relate to time as something that is objective or in nature, has to do with the luminaries or has to do with the seasons. It has to do with each culture and its designated time-making people that decides which time will be spent on work and which time will be for rest and which time will be for commemoration of this kind of that kind of worship. And the person or the people, the group that is in charge of that Zeitbestimmung, of the time control, is really are really the ones who control the conversation. If you control time, you control the conversation. And this is what I would like to explore with you today. I'd like to bring to you three main topics that has to do with the decision-making process that has to do with time. Each one of them is from a different type of, a different character, but I think altogether they build a nice, a coherent structure, and I hope that we will be able to see the general structure. But when I was thinking about it, I remember the Torah portion that we're going to read this Shabbat, Parashat Bo. And in Parashat Bo, God speaks to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt. We are a minute before the Exodus from Egypt. And the one thing that God has to say to Moses and Aaron is this: החודש הזה לכם ראש חודשים, ראשון הוא לכם לחודשי השנה. I think it's really like a poet. It sounds like a poem in Hebrew. This month shall be for you the beginning of the months. It shall be for you the first of the month of the year. In other words, what God has to say to the liberated slaves, the first thing that you will receive as you go about to be a free people, that you will be in charge, it will be that you will be in charge of your time. You will be in charge of your calendar. When you were enslaved people in the land of Egypt, you didn't have control over your time. Your enslavers told you when to eat, when to sleep, when to work. I always used to think about this verse in past time, but now that we think about the people who are in a situation of being enslaved, not so far away from where I'm sitting here speaking with you, that have no control over their time, sometimes they don't know if it's a day or night, I really think about the fact that having the calendar is the first condition of being a free people, of being able to control yourself, to do what you choose to do as a people, and as individuals. When God speaks about HaChodesh Hazeh, this month, he speaks about what is the first month for you. According to the Torah, the first month of the year is the month that we call today Nisan. Of course, the Torah didn't know the names of the months that we have today. They came later with the exilers that returned from Babylon. So the year began in Nisan, not like we begin today with Tishrei, with Rosh Hashanah. The New Year Day is not the month that we celebrate Pesach. It's the other side of if you draw a line from the beginning of the month of Nisan to the other side of the calendar, you will get to the first day of Tishrei, and that's our Rosh Hashanah. So here already you see the debates, how we transitioned from celebrating the new year in the month of Nisan. That's the month of the Exodus. The Jews left Egypt and were born as a people, as opposed to Rosh Hashanah, the New Year Day that we celebrate today in Tishrei, which is, according to our tradition, the day that the human being was created or the world was created. So you see a very particularistic, very national day, as opposed to the cosmic day that has to do with the humanity in general. And this was the one that was chosen, the Rosh Hashanah, the New Year Day in Tishrei. So, first of all, the first debate that I would like to bring to mind, and if you have questions, please don't hesitate to write them in the chat. And Alex agreed to help to monitor it after we finish this presentation. You can. I'm happy to hear your questions or remarks or protests or complaints or additions to what I'm bringing here. How do we calculate a year? Are we having a solar year, which is, as we know, 365 days and a quarter, more or less? Or are we having a lunar year that has 354 days and about a third? If you think about it, the lunar calendar has to do with the month, the cycle of the month, which is 29 days per cycle of the time it takes the moon to complete a whole circle around the planet Earth. So it makes sense to think about the lunar month, but what does it mean, a lunar year? The lunar year is just 12 months. There's not really a meaning, an inner meaning to the concept of a lunar year. And this is quite the opposite with the solar year. The solar year, we know now that it takes planet Earth to make a full circle around the sun. That's what creates, or that's what determines our seasons, right? Winter, spring, summer, or fall. All you have to do is call. But what is the meaning of a solar month? You just take the year and you divide it into 12 months. So that was a source of a lot of debates in the ancient world. In some ancient, in Mesopotamia, in Egypt, in some places they had more than one calendar. They had one calendar for political issues and one calendar for worship. One was the king was in charge of, and the other were the priests were in charge of. What happened in ancient Israel? And let's see that. So we know that the solution that we have today is a luni-solar calendar. It is basically a lunar calendar that is based on the moon, but since the lunar calendar, as you can see, is 11 days shorter than the solar year, if we were depending only on the lunar year, then the seasons will drift backwards every year 11 days, and that's a lot, because after 3 years, it's a full month. And eventually we'll get to a place where Pesach is celebrated in the middle of the summer or in the dead of winter. And we know the Torah tells us that we have to celebrate Pesach B'chodesh Aviv, in the month of spring. So in order to kind of correct this, we have a amendation to our lunar calendar, and every once in a while we have a leap year, or as we call it in Hebrew, Shana Me'uberet, pregnant year, which is very interesting because a lot of terms that have to do with time have to do with women cycles. That's very interesting. So a year that has extra month, instead of 12 months, it has 13 months, is called, in English, it's called a leap year, and in Hebrew, it's called a pregnant year, Shana Me'uberet. But it was not always accepted by everyone, yeah? By the way, you know that in Islam, this is a strictly lunar year. That's why their sacred month is shifting around the calendar. When my Muslim friends are always happy when Ramadan falls on the winter, because the days are short and they don't have to fast for so many hours. They're not very happy when it's fall on the summer. Most Christian denominations are based on the solar year, and we, the Jews, we have this mixed or combined system. I want to show you now a text from the Book of Jubilees. The Book of Jubilees was one of the external book, one of the apocryphal. This is a book that did not make it into the canon of the Hebrew Bible, but it was composed in Jewish circles in the Second Temple time, probably the 2nd century before Common Era. And it represents a unique sectarian kind of calendar. And this is the calendar that Noah receives after he leaves the ark, and it says the following: and all the days of the commandment will be 250 weeks of days, and these will make an entire year complete. Shanat Mima, complete year. Thus it is engraved and ordained on the heavenly tablets. So 52 weeks, if you make a quick mathematical calculation, 52 times 7, it will give you 364 days, which is almost a lunar cycle, but it's a very clear and neat system that is very well organized, and it's not human made. It's not, we don't have to observe anything. We don't have to make any decisions. It happens in nature. That's the year in the book of Jubilees, and then it continues, and there is no neglecting this commandment for a single year or from year to year. That's how it works. And command thou the children of Israel that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days, that's the 52 times 7, and these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts, for everything will fall out of them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feast. So everything is in the heavenly tablets. It's already ordained from the days of creation. We human beings have no touch of it. And then the book of Jubilees, who really, we don't know who the author was, but they really did not like the lunar cycle. So they are saying some really harsh things about the moon. For these will be those who will assuredly make observation of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year, 10 days too soon, right? Actually 11 days. For this reason, the year will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make the abominable day, the day of the testimony, and an unclean day, a feast day, right? Because they will they'll confuse the days, and they will celebrate on a day that they shouldn't celebrate. And they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go wrong as to the month and the Sabbath and the feasts and the jubilees. For this reason I command and testify to thee, about thou mightst testify to them. Old English kind of, right? It's the old Charles translation. For after thy death, thy children will disturb them, right? He's speaking to Noah, right? So that they will not make the year 364 days only, and for this reason they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbath and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh, right? So if you confuse the calendar, you will end up confusing everything and anything, and you will end up eating things that you're not supposed to eat. But look at the neat year. It has 52 weeks. It has exactly 4 quarters. Each one of them has 91 days, and the festivals will always fall on the same day and never on Shabbat, because according to this sectarian book, you're not supposed to bring any offerings except on Shabbat, except for the offerings of Shabbat. And everything is already set. No touch of human participation in it. Obviously, this is not how the rabbis understood how we should calculate the time. And we get a very beautiful description of how they determined if it's going to be a leap year or a leap month. Sometimes it was a month that has an extra day, and sometimes it was a normal month. And we get this description about the house of study of Rabban Gamliel, who was a very authoritative leader of the Yavne generation, first century BCE, and this is what the Mishnah says about him. Rabban Gamliel had forms of the moon on a tablet, on a wall of his attic, maybe something a little bit like this, right? All the phases of the moon, which he would show to the layman, right? Because how do you determine when a new month begins? You need to have testimonies of people, of lay people. And he would say to them, did you see like this or like this? And he would examine them separately and then make a decision if we need to add another day to the month, or if this is going to be a normal month. We know that people had sometimes motivation to not say the truth, because I don't know, if you have a business and it's for you, it would be good for your business that a new month begins now. Maybe you will not say the truth. So they really had to be examined to make sure they say the truth. Now the Mishnah is telling us about an event that happened. I skipped a little bit because of taking. I want to be attentive to our time. There was an incident in which two people came and said, "We saw it as its proper time." Right? We saw the moon. The moon was born. I just want to remind you that the Jewish months begin when the moon is hardly visible. Yeah, it's like the upper, it's like, really like a very, very small crescent here. So they say we saw it in the proper time. But on the night, which should have been the new moon, it was not seen. And Rabban Gamliel nevertheless accepted their evidence, even though it was clear that the moon was not there. Rabbi Dosa ben Harkina said, they are false witnesses. How can they testify that a woman has given birth when on the following day she is still pregnant? Right? Again, you see the time-related language with the women cycles. Obviously, he didn't think about the fact that even after a woman gives birth, she also looks a little bit pregnant sometimes. But he says, how can you say that the new moon was born, but we didn't see it? Rabbi Joshua said to him, I see your argument. I agree with you. And then Rabban Gamliel, we already said he was very authoritative, authoritarian leader, the head of the Sanhedrin. He said, he sent to him, to Rabbi Yoshua, I order you to appear before me with your staff and your money on the day which, according to your count, should be the Day of Atonement. In other words, I command you to defile the day that, according to your calculation, is a holy day. You're not supposed to go around with your staff and with your money on you. But I demand of you to do so everybody will know that you accept my authority, that you accept my decree. Rabbi Akiva went and found him in distress. He said to him, Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Joshua, I can teach that whatever Rabban Gamliel has done or has decided is valid. Right? We have to accept his decree, even though in terms of the cosmic situation in the heavenly bodies of light, he was wrong, but we have to accept his decree. He, Rabbi Yoshua, apparently accepted his opinion and went to Rabbi Dosa ben Harkina and said to him, if we call in question the court of Rabban Gamliel, we must call in question every decision or decision of every court which has existed since the days of Moses until now. So it's a democratic system, and you can bring all kinds of testimonies, but at the end of the day, you have to accept the rule of the Bet Midrash. So I'm accepting myself the rule of Rabban Gamliel, although I know he's wrong. And the story ends in I think, a very touching way. He, Rabbi Yoshua, took his staff and his money in his hand and went to Yavne to Rabban Gamliel on the day which, according to his account, was the Day of Atonement. In other words, he shows his submissiveness to Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel stood up and kissed him on his head and said to him, come in peace, my teacher and my disciple, my teacher in wisdom and my disciple because you have accepted my decree. So in other words, Rabban Gamliel apparently accepted that Rabbi Yoshua was right in his calculation, but nevertheless, he is the one who is the head of the Sanhedrin, and he is the one who gets to be the final decider on that. So you can see that the rabbinic way of calculating time is very different from the sectarian approach that is seen in the book of Jubilees. That is, everything is very clear, very determined. You can calculate the years ahead of time. The rabbinic way is not easy at all, because you can't really plan things ahead. When I'm going to take a vacation, because you never know if you're going to have an extra month by the end of the year, right? A second Adar, or a second month of Adar, or you don't know if the month will be longer. So it's a much more iffy situation. But on the other hand, it's a collaboration between God and human beings. And going back to the verse that we saw before, this month for you, the Midrash says this month is for you to decide. I created the world, said God. I created the luminaries, the moon, the sun, but now it's your job to decide upon it. And that's the uniqueness of the rabbinic way of dealing with things, that it's a combination of the divine system and the human decree. Obviously, after some decades or some centuries, in fact, it became very difficult. It was also very difficult to announce to the diaspora when you have a leap year or a full month. And thus we got the fixed calendar. And now we can, if you want to follow the Hebrew calendar, you can plan ahead. So when did we get the fixed calendar? According to our tradition, it was Rabbi Hillel Nesiah, the 4th century, but we still have debates about time already in the 10th century. So there were debates between the land of Israel and Babylon. It was very not necessarily always on the same time. Now I could not resist by having a word about the Kiddush Levana, the sanctification of the moon. This is a special blessing, a special bracha that we say when the moon is growing, when the moon is waxing, from the birth of the moon, where it's hardly seen, all the way until it's full. There's a special blessing that we say, and different ethnic group within Judaism have slightly different custom when exactly you can say it, but it has to be said when the moon is still waxing, that is to say until it's full, until the middle of the month, and it has to be visible. So think about, if you're in Europe and sometimes it's very cloudy, you have to calculate when you can say it. And the reason I'm bringing this to you today is because today, I didn't plan it, I told Alex just a minute before, but today in our Daf Yomi, the system of studying the Babylonian Talmud in a regimen that every day we read a daf, a 2-page from the Talmud, and thus we will complete the entire Talmudic literature in a course of 7.5 years, and I'm doing it with my group that is called Anan Kvodecha. We study the Daf Yomi every day, and today we fall into the Kiddush Levana discussion. So the question is, until when can you say the blessing for the moon, for the new moon? And this is what the Talmud says. Rabbi, and I'm reading from Tractate Sanhedrin. We're currently studying Tractate Sanhedrin 41b to 42a. Rabbi Acha Bar Chanina says, in the name of Rav Asi, who says it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, until how many days into the new month one may recite the blessing of the month? And the answer is until its flow is filled. But what does it mean until its flow is filled? What does it mean by that? What do you mean by that? And how many days is that? Rav Yaakov Bar Idi says that Rav Yehuda says until 7 days of the month have passed. That's the last day where you can say the blessing of the moon. The sages of Nardea, the house of study of Nardea in Babylon, says until 16 days. And they both hold in accordance to Rabbi Yochanan. This says it should be like the string of a bow, and this one says that it should be as a sieve, that is to say, a full circle. So you see here, that's a bow. You see the moon should be in this form. You can see half of it. And according to the other opinion, it should be completely full as a sieve. So today we tend more to halachically to the sieve. You can say it until you can say this specific blessing until the moon is full, but you can see a debate, which is a local debate in this context. When exactly can we bless the new moon? I can only tell you that in the Siddur that I edited, we added the Kiddush Levana, the blessing of the new moon, and a lot of people were very reluctant to accept it. They say it's so pagan, but I said, you know why? It's so beautiful to be able to go out of the synagogue and go into the nature, go outside and bless the nature that we're living in, and be attentive and aware of the beautiful world that we live in. So this is another type of discussion. In this case, it's not a discussion about the system of time. Are we basing our system on solely the sun or things that are predetermined, or is it a conversation between us and what we see around us? This is about when exactly is the time that we can say this particular blessing. Obviously, the debates continued until the Middle Ages, but I just brought you the initial discussion in the Talmud. And now, as I said before, I think today we don't really have a debate about when the new year begins. We don't have a debate when Hanukkah begins, when Purim begins. We may observe it in a very different way. I don't know how you observe the Hanukkah. If I think about the last festival that we had, was it for you a festival of celebrating the miracle? Was it a festival of light? Was it a festival of military victory? Was it a celebration of diversity within Judaism? You can celebrate it in many ways, but none of us debate when Hanukkah falls. All of this is true when we think about ancient festivals. But what happens when we think about contemporary days of commemoration? I'm thinking about the commemoration of the Holocaust. And the reason I'm thinking about this is that today is the International Memorial Day of the Holocaust. Today is the January 27th. And I thought to myself, there were many suggestions. There were quite a few suggestions when we should commemorate the memory of the Holocaust. And I want to share with you some of them and see what stands behind each one of these suggestions. And that goes directly to what we saw before. Those who decides the time decides how we will remember the Holocaust, and what about the Holocaust we will remember. So maybe one of the first suggestions was to remember the Holocaust on the 9th of Av. We will explain it in a second. Or on the 10th of Tevet, which is already a fast day unto itself. It's one of the 4 fast days that commemorate the destruction of the temple. Another proposal was to remember the Holocaust on the 27th of Nisan, and another one on the 9th of November. You see, now this is not the Hebrew calendar anymore. This is the civil calendar. Another proposal was to commemorate the Holocaust on the 8th or on the 9th of May. And the last, and maybe the youngest, if I may call it this way, suggestion was the 27th of January, which is today. What stands at the core of each one of these these suggestions, and how can we see what can we see about each one of these suggestions about how we should remember the Holocaust. So the 9th of Av is a day that marks both the destruction of both temples, and it is a reciprocal for all the disasters and the catastrophes of the Jewish people. So it was very natural for many people in the young state of Israel to suggest that we will commemorate the Holocaust on the 9th of Av. There were two problems with it. One, that people felt that they need a day unto itself because of the bitterness and the gravitas of the Holocaust. And the second, that on the 9th of Av, it's the summer break of the educational system. Kids are not at school, so there's no way of marking this day in the educational systems. So that day was basically not accepted, although in some Hasidic group, this is when you remember the Holocaust. The second suggestion was the 10th of Tevet, and the chief rabbinate in the state of Israel, in the young state of Israel, proposed to make this day and to call it the General Kaddish Day. So on this day, people can say Kaddish for family members, relatives, dear ones who perished in the Holocaust, and maybe we don't know when and how and where they were perished. So that day will serve as a day to say Kaddish for all of them, and this is already traditionally a fast day. According to the tradition, this is when the Babylonian started the siege on Jerusalem. And this is a day that traditional people do observe, but it doesn't really have a lot of emotional meaning. So in that way, if you ascribe this day as a General Kaddish Day, you remember the Holocaust, and you also help to, the word that comes to my mind is to promote, but this is obviously not it's inappropriate word for this context, the 10th of Tevet. The third proposition was of the Ministry of Education in Israel, and that's to commemorate the Holocaust on the 27th of Nisan, the month of Nisan. This is the month we also celebrate Passover. And on this day, on that particular year, there was also the commemoration of the Warsaw Ghetto Revolt. So if you remember it on that day, you don't remember only the victim of the Jews as victims going like sheep to the slaughter, but also the heroes that revolt in the ghettos, right? So for the young state of Israel, this concept of victimhood was very, very hard to construe, and they combined it with the heroism. And then we have the 9th of November. Some people call it the Kristallnacht, the Kristallnacht. I don't think that we should use this term, because this is the name the Nazis gave to this set of pogroms that took place between the 9th and the 10th of November. I prefer the name the November pogrom or pogroms, or the Reichspogrom night or Nacht. So some communities, especially outside Israel, remember the Holocaust precisely on that day, because it talks about the destruction of the kehilot, of the Jewish communities. So it concentrates on that. I'm moving on to the next day, the 8th of May, which is of course the Victory Day, or the 9th. In the former Soviet Union, for some reason that I'm not sure what it is, Stalin announced the victory at the end of the war on the 9th. And this is when the people of the former Soviet Union mark or celebrate, actually, the end of the war. I remember in the 90s where we had this massive immigration to Israel from the former Soviet Union. People were marching in the streets on May 9th with their uniforms and all their medals. And I was like, we stood there, we didn't know what to do with it, because how can you even think about these years in terms of victory? But for them, it was victory. They served in the army, the Red Army, and they felt it was a day to celebrate, not just to commemorate. And of course, the youngest day, in a way, that is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. which is today. I think it was marked for the first time in 2006. And it marks the destruction of the Auschwitz camp, the occupation and destruction of the Auschwitz camp. And this is the Holocaust Memorial Day that is commemorated mostly outside the state of Israel. This year, it's also a very, how shall I say, controversial day. So as you see, I wanted to bring to you here a few types of debates about time. The first debate between the Book of Jubilees and the rabbis in Tractate Rosh Hashanah about the mere system of how we calculate time. The second one is when exactly should we do something. We all agree that we have to do the blessing for the moon. We all agree that it has to be dependent on the lunar system, but when exactly are we allowed to do that? And the third debate has to do with the commemoration of the Holocaust. We have something very significant and very important that we feel that we need to remember, but when exactly do we remember it? And how do we remember it? Do we combine it with past tragedies and catastrophes? Do we have a day unto itself? And if we do, what should be the nature of this day? Is it a particular Jewish day, or is it something that is more general with the victory over the Nazis, etc.? So you can see that there are three types of debates about time, and I discussed some of them in my book, which goes from month to month according to our Jewish year. And maybe we can, I don't know if we have time, I would like to end with a little prayer, a kavanah, meditation for the month of Tevet, because we're gonna celebrate the new moon for Shvat, for the new moon of Shvat, this Thursday. But maybe there are some questions or things to add or to ask before we do.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Rabbi Marx. We'd be happy to take some questions now if you'd like. Anyone can feel free to raise your hands or type things in the chat as well. Hi, Bob. Please go ahead.
I'm just wondering if you could say a bit more about how the transition happened from the sort of rabbinic system of human participation in deciding when the new month began or when you needed a leap year to our fixed calendar. I mean, I remember learning as a child that, Hillel II sort of came up with this whole system. And then, I found out since that it wasn't so simple. But if you could say a bit more about how that happened, I'd appreciate that.
I think this is a wonderful question, and I'm afraid I don't have a great answer to answer your question. A lot of things that have to do with the time, decisions that have to do with time, are not very well known to us. The process are kind of under the radar. We don't even know, if I want to go backwards to the biblical time, we don't know how they calculate time. Was it a lunar cycle with some amendments toward to make it with the leap years and leap months? Or was it exclusively lunar? Was it solar? Different scholars believe different things. And the process, as you said yourself, I couldn't agree more. It was not as simple as we learned in primary school, that Hillel II came and he created the eternal calendar, and from that moment on, everything is fine, and we know exactly how the year is. It was a much more gradual thing. We also only hear about Hillel II many centuries after, so we don't really know how it happened. We know that the original system was not very efficient. How do you tell all the diasporas that this is a new moon? So we have this beautiful description of the camp, the fire that people used to make to announce the new month, and then people saw the fire and make the fire to more distant villages until they got to Babylon. but it's very easy to corrupt it, and it's very easy to disturb it, and it's very easy to what happens if it's raining. It's not a very efficient way of creating a calendar. And I think, Bob, even if you don't think just about the Jewish calendar, if you think about the general calendar, when did we start to have a clear time that all of us know exactly what time it is in Paris and in Chicago or in Jerusalem? Relatively late, and it started probably with the train system. Yeah, because until then, every village has its own clock. You think about European villages, and you have the plaza, the main square, the center of town with a big clock tower that tells the city, that tells the little village what time it is. And the clocks were not always the same from this village to the next village. When you have a train system, and later on, of course, with the plane system, you have to have a system that is accepted by all, and it's very accurate. Otherwise, you won't be able to navigate anything. But that's relatively new, yeah.
I mean, again, as far as I know, like it was here in Canada, it was actually a Canadian, Sanford Fleming, who was also a railway engineer, and this was late 19th century when the railways were spreading, that who came up with the idea of standardizing time, that until then it was, I mean, the town I live in, the town sort of 5 kilometers away might have had a different time system.
Exactly. So you see, we have this expectation that time will be very accurate in different places of the world, but it wasn't like this. So also the same with the Jewish calendar. Yeah. So thank you for this question. And again, thank you for this wonderful question. And I'm sorry I cannot answer it much better than I have so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions or remarks?
I had a question. I'm sorry if I missed this. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit the difference between International Holocaust Remembrance Day and Yom HaShoah. I saw that one of the days that was being considered was in Nisan. Is that when Yom HaShoah is, and they were going to be the same? Okay.
Right. That's the Yom HaShoah. This is what is the accepted day in Israel now. And I didn't mention it, but it's a whole range of commemoration days. The first one is the Holocaust Memorial Day. The following week, we have the Memorial Day for the fallen soldiers. And the following day is Yom Ha'atzmaut, the Independence Day. So in a course of less than 10 days, sometimes we refer to them as the Israeli high holidays or the Israeli 10 days of Thanksgiving, or different names were given to it. We have the whole process from the Holocaust to the rebirth of the state of Israel, with a heavy price, unfortunately this year, very heavy price for Jewish life in this place, and eventually the Independence Day. And maybe if you want to go even further to Yom Yerushalayim, but that's also a very controversial day. The day is there, but different Jews remember it in very, very different ways. Yeah, it can be a day of going into Palestinian villages and causing harm, and it could be a day of celebrating living together and pledging allegiance to pluralism and etc. But it's a whole process. That's the day of the Holocaust that is most effectively remembered in the state of Israel, the 27th of Nisan. I would like, if there's no question, of course you can jump at any moment. I want to show you just very briefly what I have for you in terms of this book in the month of Shvat. Every month begins with a kavanah, with a meditation, and then there's a discussion of what is there in this month of Shvat, or any month, what this month brings to us. There's always a poem of the month, and on this day, since it's Israeli Family Day, I brought a poem in Yiddish, Open dem Tur, Open the Gates, by Kadia Molodowska. It's about celebrating families. And then about Tu B'Shvat, a growing holiday, and then a day that is talking about the importance of environmentalist responsibility. I think today it's especially very important. The next EU and the next chapter is about the connection between gardening and parenting, because we have the Tu B'Shvat, the new year for the trees, and then we have Tu B'Av, that's in the other side of the year. If you draw a line and you cut the year into two equal halves, from Tu B'Shvat to the other side of the calendar, you will get to Tu B'Av, which is the Jewish Valentine's Day, if you want, the day of love, and I discussed that. And then Shabbat Shira, the Sabbath of song, where we will read the Song of the Sea and the Song of Devorah. And I'm asking myself about what is the power, what is the meaning, what is the danger maybe about singing. And then there is a chapter about family and family days and how today we should or can understand families. And every prayer, every month ends with a prayer of the month. And in this case, I brought a set of prayers for welfare of our families. And maybe, Alex, if we don't have any other remarks, I will just end with the kavanah, with the meditation for the month of Shvat.
That would be great.
And yes, are we good for that?
Yes.
All right. So may we be like a tree planted beside streams of water. This is from Psalm chapter 1. May we yield our fruit in season, may our foliage never fade, and may whatever we produce thrives. May we have mercy on everything planted, growing, and seeking life. May this mercy expand and extend to the four corners of the earth. May we recognize the pain and fear of every living being on earth, multiplying good and being a blessing. May we recall at all times how pleasant and praiseworthy is all that God created. May we know that if we spoil and destroy, God forbid, there is no one to set things right after us. So may it be so. May we remember our duty and responsibility in this world, in these very turmoil and difficult times. And may we merit to hear B'sorot Tovot, Yeshuot v'Nechamot, good news and good things to come. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. Or this afternoon for you, or morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us and for leading us in that wonderful presentation. Thank you all for joining, and thank you all again for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day.